Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. What you're looking at is a 1988 TRX200SX, and the issue with it now is when you hook up a battery, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing. You got no lights, you got no starter, you got nothing. So how do we troubleshoot this? Where do we go? The first thing you want to do is put eyes on this thing, right? You want to look at it. And let's start in the back where the battery hooks up. This has the red cover on it. It says plus. Not always the case. The way you figure out which is the positive wire, you follow it, and the first place it goes is the starting solenoid. So there's my positive wire. That's a good thing to find. Second thing you're after is your negative wire. And you could follow it, and you'll find that eventually it hooks up. But look how it hooks up, right? There you got one reliable ground, so that's something to notice. You also, as you're looking at the back here, this is the voltage regulator. You can see one of the AC inputs is broken off. So even should you get everything else working, your battery is not charging. So that's something that needs to be looked at also. So we did that, and let's move forward. Generally speaking, the wire harness on this bike is in halfway decent shape, right? I don't see anything too horrible other than there's a load of wires unplugged, right? You can't do much with all these wires unplugged. So you got to kind of take a look at it and figure out what is what. These are what I kind of call the necessary engine wires, which you have these two yellow ones. That's AC power from the stator. The blue and yellow, sometimes blue and white. This comes from the pulse generator. The black and red, that powers your AC CDI system. And green will always be, most of the time, ground. Not always, but most of the time. Then you got these extra wires. Where do they go? Well, given I've had this cover off, I know they go to the neutral and reverse switches. I also know, because I was in there, that is jacked up. It was damaged when this thing threw the chain and damaged the case. So I already know that, and I got to put that in my mind, and you'll see why that's kind of important. As you follow the wires forward, you see everything else appears to be plugged in, which is good. And also, as I look at this, it appears as if somebody put a new key switch in this. Kind of important to note, because just because it was put in doesn't mean it was put in right. The wires for the headlight are installed, and the wires for the tail light are installed. Kind of missing ground here, so I'm not right. I mean, these things are important to note. So, because when you're saying to yourself, you know, the lights don't come on when I turn things on, what's going on? Do I really know what I'm up to? As you look up and down this bike, you can also have multiple problems. You can fix the wire to the back tail light and say, oh well, it should be on. Well, you don't know if there's a bulb in there, and you don't know if the bulb's any good unless you check it. So don't take that for granted. Up front here, right, that bulb, water's been allowed to get in, which could have corroded the terminals, so that bulb might be dead on its own, or the terminals might be bad. In this case, once again, neutral could have a dead light bulb. Up front, the headlight. The headlight, two bad filaments, possible, not probable, but possible. Missing. I've found that more often than I cared to admit. Or ground might not be hooked up. Or, once again, one of the wires could be bad, the switch could be bad. So, right up front, take nothing for granted. Well, where do we go from here? I'm going to hook my battery pack to it, and I'm going to turn on, well, actually I'm going to hook one lead up to the battery pack. I'm going to turn the battery pack on, and I'm just going to brush this to make sure I don't get any sparks, right? If you get sparks, you might have a short and you should start getting nervous. So I'm going to start, actually, I'm going to start by running away from the bee. I already know that I have a problem here, so I'm going to tighten that wire up. And you know what? These wires appear to be good, so I'm just going to tighten up that wire for now. So we got the jump pack hooked up. You can see I hooked this clamp right to the body, right? Red to red. Turn the key on. We got a whole lot of nothing. Before we even put a meter to this or anything else, and remember, I checked this engine. I know that the valves aren't in the way. It didn't jump timing. I know it's not seized. I know all those things. I've already put a lot of time and effort into the engine. I mean, you want to make sure the engine is free before you attempt to turn it over. I mean, I'm fighting compression right there. So, given that everything's hooked up, if I jump past, let's show it to you. If I jump past the starting solenoid, I'm putting power directly to the starter, and I know that my power is coming into the starting relay. I know I got ground hooked up, and I'll know that my starter works. And to do that, right, you'll get some sparks here. So, I know I have power to that, right? Well, so I got power to here. There's a second wire that comes off of here, and it goes to this fuse. You see it right here? And from this fuse, it goes into the wire harness, and it travels up to here, which goes to the on and off switch. And from the on and off switch, let's show you the on and off switch, right? So once again, from here to the fuse, through the harness, right? See that red wire right there? That takes me to the on and off switch. So the next thing to figure out is, do I have power here? And this is to the point where you kind of need the meter. So let me set that up and I'll show it to you. Okay, so we have the meter hooked up, right? Power in there, out through here, into the switch. Now the power comes into the switch on this red wire, and it comes out of the switch on the pure black wire. No white stripe, just pure black. This switch does two things. When it's in the off position, it shorts the black and white, the black wire with the white stripe, and the green together. It shorts those two together, which turns off your motor. And when it's in the on position, right, it takes power from this red wire and it runs it out on the black. And look at that, we got 13 volts. So when I plug this back in here, I know my wire harness is going to have power. So far, other than a loose ground wire, we've really found nothing wrong, right? Obviously, the fuse must be good because I have power coming to here. I hooked it back up. I have power coming out of here, but I still have no lights. What could be wrong? Well, remember, I was the character who messed around with the switch here, right? And we also know that all these wires are unplugged. So let's take a moment to think about this. So, I know that my key switch has power. Forget the start button, though we could push the start button and we got nothing, right? But as I'm also looking at this from the same 12 volts from the key switch, I should have a neutral light on. Well, to have a neutral light on, I need the switch inside the motor to be in the neutral position. Well, I know that's boogered up, so what I'm going to do is, you see that switch does two things. It either, when it's in neutral, that light's on, and when it's in reverse, that light's on. So if I go over here and I take a look at the wire harness, I know these two wires, the gray with the red stripe, and it looks like pure gray or gray with a white stripe, I can't see it that well, right? I know they go to here, but I also know that if I just short these two to ground, both these lights should come on. Now obviously, if I want my starter to work, I'm not sure if there's an interlock or anything that turns off my ignition. So if I want my starter to work, I'll short those both to ground and I should see both lights come on, right? But I want to disconnect the one that goes to the reverse light, because that might send some feedback into the CDI thing, which might just turn off my spark again, and we don't want that. So let's hook up, let's just ground both these wires from the wire harness and see if we can't get some action with these lights over here. With both these wires shorted to ground, I just went with that green wire right there, given it was convenient, right? So basically, I've turned both those things on, something you really can't do. Look at this. I have the both lights on, so that's a good thing. So now that I have ground here, I'm wondering if my starting solenoid works. Whoa, check that out. So we're in good shape. So we're making progress. I am going to turn off the reverse light now. I'm just going to stick with the neutral light. Right? I'm going to unplug the wire here that does it. I'm not sure which one it is. It's not that one, because the green light went out, but the other one went on. So I got to reverse those two. Let's get to the point where we have a neutral light. So we have it. So you turn the power on. You got neutral. I got a whole load of nothing for the headlight. I got a whole load of nothing for the tail light. I do have starter, which is good. These switches are, I mean, maybe I could get a little flicker when I turn them on and off. Nothing. The bright, the high-low switch won't turn. So I think it's fairly probable that they're just corroded all the heck in there. Right, I got nothing. So let's forget about the lights for now. Not needed. Once again, this switch is, that'll move, that won't, that still moves. So anyway, let's keep going forward. What I did next is I just matched all the wires to where they go, right? Green to ground, and I have this extra one coming out so that I could get the neutral light grounded, lit up, all that. I hooked the black and red to the black and red, the blue and yellow to the blue and yellow, and once again green to ground. So all the wires are hooked up, right? I didn't mess with these, and I don't recommend messing with these, because and if you do decide to mess with these, make sure you write everything down, because not all the wires hook up to what they used to hook up to, right? Your color coding might change here. I really find that, especially with the stuff from China, you find a lot of that. So, power on. once again, everything is hooked up properly. So let's see what my spark looks like. Let me set it up so I make sure we can all see it. So, right, you need that to actually touch to have spark. So, you guys could see we have spark and we're ready to go. Though we know there's been some messing around with this wire harness, it wasn't in too bad a shape. Also notice I did not bother to hook up the power, the AC power from the stator to go into the wire harness to go to this, to go to charging the battery. Why? Because I did not hook this wire back up. In the meantime, I'm going to put the plug wire on. I'll put a little gas in it, and let's see if the thing will fire up. So, when we started on this all-terrain vehicle, we would give it power and nothing happened. Now, turn on the switch, neutral light comes on, hit the start, I put some gas in it, choke is on. So, remember where this all-terrain vehicle started. It started out as damaged cover, leaking oil, timing chain was out one notch, pulse generator was no good. We replaced the cover with a patched cover. This cover happened to come through with a good pulse generator and all, so that was changed all at the same time. Remember, we had the top off, figured out it had jumped one step, and we fixed that. By the way, when I did that, I dropped the chain, and I actually had to use a piece of wire to kind of put the chain back on. You kind of use the wire to get the chain where it needs to be, and you got to kind of feed it around as you're turning this to get the chain to go back, on. So we fixed that. Now we have it. Once again, turn the switch on. Might be out of gas. Hopefully it's out of gas, because that's where you want it to be. Now, if I put the sprocket on and the chain on, this thing will actually be ready for a ride, right? Just have to put a battery into it. I mean, this thing is moving more and more toward the range of a living, breathing, riding, all-terrain vehicle. So I'm happy with the progress we made on it. From a learning point of view, there was a lot of stuff we had to do, so I hope you enjoyed it. This is actually known as the, it's really a 1988 Honda TRX200SX. I should probably get all the videos on this thing and put it together, perhaps put together an intro video of this is what this stack of videos is going to be about. So you could kind of take the worst of the all-terrain vehicles and get it to the point where it's alive and rideable again. About how much money I've put into it, I don't know, call the carburetor 20 bucks. I still have to cough up for a battery, that's another 50, 70. This cover I think was, this cover came off that damaged one, but if you got to put a cover on them, it's 150 bucks, something like that, plus the cost of this quad, which was another couple of hundred. I mean, so one could see you could add up a lot of money cheap. But in the condition of this quad, a lot of times you could get them for free. One of your buddies will say, man, I can't fix that for anything. Why don't you come get it? You can have it for free. Then you could amaze him by following the videos and getting it running. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for dropping by to watch and comment and subscribe. Please remember to keep your feet down, your heads up, and get out there and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.